Morning. We're going to. We're in Tehillim Mem Ches 48. Tehillim Mem Ches, Kapitel Mem Ches 48, and we saw last week that this is all about the glory of Yerushalayim at the time of the vanquished nations of the world. Those nations that rise up against Yerushalayim, literally come marching on Yerushalayim, attacking her, are defeated. The glory of Yerushalayim is described in the first psukim. We are up to pasuk Hey, 5. After describing how HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there in Yerushalayim, in the citadels, in the fortresses, that Hashem is the fortress protecting the Jewish people, protecting Yerushalayim. Pasuk now recounts that what happened to the nations was, of course, that they came. This is referring, according to many Mefarshim, to the eventual terrible wars of Gog and Magog. And the nations come, the kings leading those nations band together and come as one against Yerushalayim. Does this not sound familiar? So we don't know if, when the eventuality of the arrival of Mashiach unfolds, maybe we will be explained and told how this has already happened. Perhaps all of this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mystery. Ours is to do mitzvos, ma'asim tovim, and understand that this is what we are headed toward: the glory of Yerushalayim, Mirz Hashem, the rebuilding of Yerushalayim, and the defeat of the nations, really, roundly. Pasuk number 5. Ki, hine, hamelachim no'adu. No'adu, like the word ohel moed, where people come together. Sometimes a group or council is called a ba'ad. So no'adu then means they join together with joint purpose. Avru yachdav. And then together came up to Yerushalayim. Avru means to move in a particular direction. And it's very common to use that word when describing a very purposeful travel. Yaakov Avinu is described in the Torah when he's preparing to meet Esav. Similarly, the Torah says he brings his gifts and sends the gifts ahead. Vata'avor hamincha al panav. So it doesn't necessarily mean to cross. You can think about Aver Layam, Aver Layardain, hence the name of Avram Ha'ivri. It doesn't always mean to cross. It means to travel or send, in this case, in our case, an army in a particular direction for a particular purpose.
It's that speaks for Abraham Avinu too, that he was having a purpose to Abraham Avinu, a purpose to go there because Kadosh Baruch Hu told him to go. To a certain degree.
Again, he's called Ivri because he's from the family of Ava. That's Bikar. Shem Ava. He's a descendant of Ava. And he comes from Aver Lanohar, the other side of the Tigris, or the other side of the Euphrates. And then we talk about the fact that he is on one side of the stance of the world vis-a-vis HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the rest of the world is on the other side. But here, when it says Avru Yachdav, it doesn't. I'm just trying to clarify in understanding of the words. It doesn't mean they crossed together. Avru Yachdav means they traveled in a particular direction and moved together, advanced toward Yerushalayim together. Hemara'u. They all saw. What did they see? The pasuk doesn't quite say exactly what they saw, but it certainly was startling, and it certainly disarmed them somehow. Came Tamahu. And just as they saw what they saw, they were immediately astonished, really shocked, that they couldn't take Yerushalayim, that they couldn't defeat the Jewish people, that the Lord has defended Am Yisrael in a way that they are completely shocked, nivhalu. They're bewildered. Behala is bewilderment and shock. So severe that they can't make decisions. They can't.
Sorry. It said that the angels came together and they traveled together. No, it's not the angels.
It's the kings.
Oh, the kings. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
That's all right.
Oh, yeah.
That's a whole other discussion. Why is it that the word malach is the same as melech? It's just that one aleph in the middle changes it completely, right? All right. So it's all right. Just as an aside, you have to sing Shalom Aleichem really carefully, because sometimes when you sing Shalom Aleichem, you say Mimelech Malache Hamlochim, which is incorrect. Mimelech Malche Hamlochim. Because you're not talking about the king who comes from the angels. You're talking about the King of Kings. Mimelech Malche Hamlochim. Right, so I've heard many times. I hear Melech Malachi Hamalachim. Okay, as long as we're singing nicely, okay. Anyway, so Noadu Avru Yachdav Heimerau Kain Tamohu, and Kain means that immediately, means just as they arrive. What do they find? Not a city that they can easily conquer. Not a city undefended, a city that's destined to be defended by HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. And that's part of what adds to their astonishment. And we're looking at this so much today. My friends, what is it that shocks the world and troubles them so much?
Yeah.
That Jews have the gall to defend themselves. And then what's most disturbing is that they do so successfully. Which it's not supposed to happen that way. It never did. Not in known history, not in remembered history. Came to Mohu. It's astonishing to them. Nivalu, nechpazu. Nechpazu.
What is nechpazu exactly?
They ran away. Nechpozu means to flee in haste. Nechpozu, to flee in haste. Yeah. And this, again, is the reason why we can't be sure whether this is going to happen, and in some way it already has happened. Remember, Nevuah is by its nature something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu plans, even has us understand that it's going to happen. Exactly what it looks like could be what we already experienced, or what yet will occur, or a combination. When it happens, Mir Hashem will be told, and this event and that event and the other event, well, that's what it means in the pasuk in Zechariah or in Yeshayahu or here in Tehillim Memches. Ra'ada achazosam sham. Ra'ada is shaking. When the earth shakes, when it's a earthquake, the ra'ada. And this trembling of these enemies of Am Yisrael is so powerful, it grips them. An achiza means a grip, right? A hold on something is an achiza. Ra'ada achazatam sham. This trembling just gripped them. Very powerful description of an enemy that's not just defeated, but disarmed and completely incapable of doing any harm to Yerushalayim, to Am Yisrael. Chil kayoleda. Trembling and shaking, convulsions like that of a woman in childbirth. Just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu sometimes brings winds that can shatter whole ships. Ruach Kadim. And Ruach Kadim is always that powerful wind from the east. And that does things that are just so mighty and powerful. Coming from the east, of course, means Mikedem. It means coming from the one who is the original and was here before the world ever existed. How is the HaKadosh Baruch Hu known as? Coming from Kedem. Kedem means what? Kodem means before. That's right. So where was Gan Eden? Me, Kedem. Yeah. What was the powerful wind that caused the waters of the Yam Suf to stand up like walls on either side? Ruach Kodim Azo. Very strong east wind. You see? See the pattern. Huh? Ruach Kodim Shaber Onios Tarshish. So Tarshish is a place. And we're not sure exactly whether it's the Tarshish on the coast of the Mediterranean in the east, near Turkey, or it's Tarshish in Spain. It means the big ships. Aniot Tarshish means large merchant vessels. Tishaber Onios Tarshish. And these winds, these hurricanes, these storms break apart these great mighty ships. That kind of a storm hits these soldiers, these malachim, these kings who are marching against Yerushalayim. Now, it doesn't mean that there's a weather event. It means that the shock and somehow their defeat as they come to Yerushalayim is as powerful as the storm that shatters this mighty ship, the ships of Tarshish. Now, this is a very, very important pasuk. Kasher shamanu kein ra'inu. Kasher shamanu kein ra'inu means just as we heard about it before it happened, just as it was told to us, and we've heard through the years, even through the centuries or the millennia. The Nevi'im told us it's going to happen. You'll see. Now, Am Yisrael, you're suffering so much, and you're in a state of such diminution and humility. You're downtrodden even. And it's going to happen. It's going to come. You're going to have your Yerushalayim rebuilt, and you're going to have HaKadosh Baruch Hu defend you. You're going to see the defeat of all these nations all at once. So the Bnei Korach say, Kasher Shamanu, just as we heard. We couldn't believe it. Kein Re'inu. That's exactly what we saw. We saw it unfold just as we heard it. And when we heard it, it was unbelievable. Literally unbelievable. But there it is. Keinu Be'ir Hashem Tzvakos. Be'ir Lekeinu. We saw it happen right there in the city that is Hashem's city, but it's Hashem Tzvakos. Hashem, who is the real master of all of the armies, of all the legions. Let's say people translate Tzvakos as legions, large armies. Because who's really in charge of, the army of this nation, the other nation, another nation? Who's really in charge? Who's really the general? Who's the commander in chief of all of them? That's what the pasuk means. That's right. That's right. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem Tzvakos, is ultimately the power behind all of these armies. All of them. These legions are all His, because He is Hashem Tzvakos. I'm just trying to say that's why the term Hashem Tzvakos is used here, because it's a military term, if you will, in a certain way. A tzava is, after all, it's the lashon that we use for an army. So Hashem Tzvakos means, or Tzvakos means that it is Hashem who ultimately is the commander in chief of all of these armies. So He decides what happens on the battlefield and what doesn't happen. Where? Be'ir Elokeinu, the city that is our Hashem's city. Elokim Yechaneneha ad Olam Sela. HaKadosh Baruch Hu preserve that city forever. Sela. Sela means truthfully, eternally, and exclamation point, all at once. It's a great word, Sela.
Would you repeat that? You're all the time.
Sela means it is a fact that is eternal, exclamation point.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is the point where we'll leave off. The rejoicing of Am Yisrael in the aftermath of this battle is described in the next psukim. We'll finish the siman in Ritz Hashem next week. But here what we have is a brief description, not of how it happens, but of the shock and awe, as it's called. And that's the expression used when an army overtakes an enemy in a way that was completely unexpected and in a way that really disarms the enemy and bewilders the enemy utterly, right? It's called shock and awe. I think that's the expression used in English. Shock and awe. Yeah, that's the expression. In other words, where you come in, like lahavdil, the Yamach Shemam, the way they called it, blitzkrieg, yeah? Which was meant to just overawe and shock and overwhelm in one attack, in one assault. So the pasuk here is describing, or the psukim here describe this kind of shocking defeat, one that clearly, what is meant by Bnei Korach, and why David HaMelech adopts this and puts this in Tehillim, is because it's something to give us heart, and it's something that clearly only the Rebbeinu Shalom can do. And the point here is that when something happens, our obligation is to look at it and understand, when you can boldly see, this cannot be but HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what Bnei Korach are telling us. You're going to see things as we already have seen. So much that can only be. It can only be. This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yeah. So we're going to look at some of the ideas of Sphera Omer, because Sphera Omer is a mitzvah in Parshas Emor. Every year, it's amazing, but somehow every year, Parshas Emor is during Spheres Omer. And there it is, Sfartim Lachem in Macharas Shabbos, right in the middle, like we are in the middle of the Omer, aren't we?
Yeah.
What we counted, today's 27. So we're a little bit closer to the Shua side than the Pesach side, but we're basically right smack in the middle of the Sphera. And the Torah says as follows. Torah says that when we come to Eretz Yisrael, this is in Siman Chav Gimel, Pasuk Yud, we come to Eretz Yisrael, we start our harvest. This is the beginning of the harvest season. Harvest now is of barley. Wheat is not quite ready. June, end of June, July, that's when the planted, quote, unquote, winter wheat will be ready. But what first comes out of the ground, and this is intended by the Almighty, is barley. Barley, which is much less favorable and not easily digested and commonly used to feed not only man, but also beast. Now you're going to have the cutting, the harvest of the land, and it's interesting that it's ktsira, harvest of the land, belongs to the land, belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it is to be understood and appreciated because it's the land that I, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, am giving you. I want you to bring, he says, V'haveisem es omer reishis ktsirchem. I want you to take your first gleaning, your first harvest, and say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, thank you. That's the concept. The concept isn't for a Jew to say, oh, now I have not my first or second or third million shekel. I already have done my 10th million shekel. 10 million, now I say thank you. No. You go to work as a younger man, as a young person or as a young girl, and you made your first salary and you came home at the end of the week with 900 shekel. And you say, thank you. Wow, 900 shekel, right? Today, could be that, could be a little less, even depending on what kind of work some young man or woman is involved in. And they say, thank you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the trick is not to say thank you because somebody once said at a shir, you're supposed to take your rachis and thank you for the rachis. You're supposed to actually feel that way. You have to genuinely believe that this is wonderful. Whether or not I'm confident that there'll be another 800, 900 next week or not. It's this, you've given me this. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you've given me this. It's so kind of you. It's so fantastic. Now, if we genuinely think and feel that way, so then of course, then there'll be in Ritz Hashem much more to harvest. Klal Gadol is that if we have an understanding of where it comes from, an appreciation for that little bit with which we begin, so then, yes, midah keneged midah, if you appreciate it so much, okay, so I'll proffer a bit more. And then there's a funny thing that's done. It's waved and lifted. V'heinif es omer. So that's what it's called, the omer hatnufa. This is waved. The Kohanim take this sheaf of barley and wave it and lift it up. L'fnei Hashem l'rtzonchem, meaning so that there will be appreciation for you in Shemayim. Yinifenu HaKohen. The Kohen, who represents all of us, is doing this interesting lifting up and waving of the sheaf of barley l'fnei Hashem. And then, attendant, b'yom hanifchem es omer asur karbanos kevis tam ben shnas l'oila. And then, of course, there's the preparation of the barley made into a korban, into a mincha offering on the mizbeach. And that is how the days of Sphera begin. This is the day after the first of Pesach, right? This is on the 16th of Nisan. And then we count from that event. Usfartem lochem mimocharas hashabos. We count miyom haviachem as omer hatanufa. From that day, Sheva Shabbos is timimus tinyano. Make sure you count 7 full weeks. Ad mimocharas hashabos hashaviyis tismu chamishi yom. Count till the 50th day, and then hikraftem mincha chadosho Hashem. And then that next korban is a chadosh. That's chadosh, but not of barley, of wheat. The first new harvested wheat to be used in the Beis HaMikdash on Shavuos, Shtei Alechem. That's described then by the Torah. Now, this counting from that which we've done on the day after Pesach till Shavuos is known to us as Sphera Omer. This Sphera Omer is named after the omer. You're counting from the omer. The omer was that sheaf of barley brought on the 16th, and now we count from there to Shavuos. Now, if it's miyom haviachem, so I understand that you count from that day. So the Torah is telling us to count from that day. Day 1 from that day, day 2, day 3, day 4. That's why we count up. The obvious question that people always ask is, you're counting down to Shavuos, why don't you count down? Now the Torah emphatically says, no, you're counting from. But there's a deeper and important message here. And that is that we're advancing. The whole point is to advance. Advance from where you came from. The Baal HaKeder, Bitzchak Arama, one of the great Spanish Rishonim, a victim of the Spanish expulsion. He was in the Spanish expulsion. He was driven out of Spain in 1492. Many hundreds of thousands were. He ended up in Italy. Ended up in Naples. And the Bitzchak Arama says, Chodosh is not to be eaten. No one is allowed to have any new crop of grain. And that still applies today. In Eretz Yisrael here, according to all opinions, no new harvested grain may be eaten until after the 16th of Nisan, called Chodosh. Yeah, that's the din of Chodosh. And the reason for that is, what are you rushing to take your physical bread? That's not on what you live. This materialism of yours, it has no place. You're clamoring for your parnasa. That's not what life is for. I gave you freedom yesterday. I took you from Mitzrayim. Avos hatzvek, as we say in China. For what purpose? For what purpose? So you should eat fresh bread? Falafel b'mana? No, that's not why I took you. I took you to be a spiritual people. I took you to be b'nei chayrin, to be truly free, not tethered to physicality and to things. I took you for high ideals. Someone just told me, I read somewhere that a certain city in America where there's a major Jewish population has reached a milestone. You know, there were 120 people in the Anshe Knesset Hagdolim, 120. And the great sages founded so much of our Yiddishkeit, of our Torah Shel Peh begins with the era of Anshe Knesset Hagdolim. Shimon HaTzadik Hu Hayim Misheri Anshe Knesset Hagdolim. That's where we understand the beginnings of Torah Shel Peh start to become known and recorded for our sake. Yeah, we have a Knesset 120 because of that. So I read somewhere a celebration. This city in Ir Ve'em Yisrael now has 100 120 kosher establishments.
It was
Kosher places to eat.
Restaurants.
Restaurants. Probably means restaurants plus eateries plus bagels plus this. Baruch Hashem, he got to, maybe, I don't know, you make Shechianu, you make a Shemu Malchus, I don't know. Did they count the Sphera up till 120 as the process unfolded year by year? I don't know. A big celebration. We Higanu Baruch Hashem 120 kosher stuff. Now look, please. I there's nothing wrong with having a kosher stuff. It's a very nice thing to have places that it's fine, okay, but it's too much. It means too much to us. It means too much because that's what a person. What's a human being? What is a human being? A human being is ratzon, her desires, her yen, her beck and call. What do you want? How do you judge a person? Person is, what do they want? What's the ratzon? What do we ask of a Kadosh Baruch Hu? The last three brachas of Shemar Esrei. What's important to us, right? The last two brachas of Shemar Esrei. Ritzei Hashem Elokeinu b'amcha Yisrael. Last. Ritzei b'amcha Yisrael. The last three brachas with which we end. Ritzei Hashem Elokeinu b'amcha Yisrael. Ratzon is. So that's what we're breaking. A farmer, all of us, springtime, look, things are growing. We're going to have a harvest. We're going to have what to eat. Baruch Hashem. Yes, you have to say Baruch Hashem, 100%. But what are you celebrating? Life and the ability to live and the parnasa. For what reason? Lift that up to HaKadosh. Not just in an expression of thanks, says the Bitzchak, but in an expression of the fact that my parnasa is so that I can live before you, not so that I can indulge and have a good time, but to live before you, so that I have meaningful life, a life that's full of meaning and spirit and therefore high purpose. Lift it up to HaKadosh Baruch. So now, I'm sure many of us say the tefillah with this pasuk before we count Sphera, right? Like it says in the Torah, so now you can understand when Chachamenu told us, say these psukim before you count Sphera. The point is, think about what's going on. Think, why are you counting? From what are you counting? Right? Why are you counting this way, adding to what? If you're counting to Matan Torah, so it should be 49, 48, 47, 46, until you get to the end, like, 1 day left, only 1 day till Shavuos, and that the last night should be a counting of one more day to Shavuos. The answer is because we're counting from, because we are growing, because we started a process where we said, I don't have this barley, basic food, in order to enjoy myself, in order to be waxing fat, meaning self-satisfied. I'm not here for the gluttonous existence called the pursuit of happiness, as interpreted by many people in, let us say, the United States of America. That's not my purpose. I'm here for something much higher, much greater. And that's why I begin this humble process with Michael Behema, which is just barley, which is had by animals. The Bitzchak Rama says material living, eating in order to subsist. Animals do that too. Animals also eat grain, right? We have to be different. The process of counting Sphera is the process of making of ourselves and forming of our neshamos something higher, something greater, one step higher than the other. So people say simplistically, yeah, but we're counting Teshuas. If you're counting Teshuas, then you should count down, not up. The answer is no, we're counting up because we are going up. we are advancing. Now, Rav Moshe Shapiro adds something very important and says that it's a combination of both halacha and hashkafa. He says, but does the Torah ever tell us to mark the 6th of Sivan? It never says it, right? The Rosh Hashanah is the first of the 7th month, first of Tishrei, and the 10th is Yom Kippur, and the 15th is Sukkot. And Pesach is a carbon on the 14th, and the first day of Yom Tov is the 15th. Shavuos is the only Yom Tov. It doesn't ever say the 6th of. No, as a matter of fact, and the calendar was a fluid calendar, and sometimes Nisan would be Malay, and sometimes it would be Chaser, and sometimes the year was Malay, and sometimes we always have Nisan, Malay, Iyar, Chaser, yeah, but it wasn't that way. 30 days, 29 days. So it could be, Shavuos was the 5th, 6th, the 7th, because the issue is not the day of the month of Sivan. The issue is 50th day after the beginning of Pesach. You have gone to make that day by counting and growing to that day. We make that day by counting. It is the counting that causes the day of Shavuos to materialize. It's not that it's the 6th of Sivan. It's that it is the 50th day since the bringing of the omer HaTanufah. And that's not theoretical. That's a factual Torah principle that you will have Chag HaBikurim, Shavuos, 50 days after Pesach. Whether it's the 5th or the 6th or 7th of Sivan, it doesn't matter. Huh? Again, we're so used to having a fixed 6th Sivan Shavuos because of our fixed calendar that's relatively new. But in the genuine Jewish calendar, it's fluid, and it could be on any of these days. Unlike any other Jewish holiday, which is a fixed day of a particular calendar month, not Shavuos. Shavuos is 50 days since we left Mitzrayim. That's it. By counting, we get to that 50th day, and now we make that day. We make that day. Shavuos. That's why we count up, because we are making the 50th day Chag Shavuos. But that means something much more profound, and that is that to be a people at Sinai, we have to do the work. It's not like, you're going to come to 6th of Sivan and you're going to be at Sinai. There you are. No. You misunderstand the whole process. You have to count up to, you have to advance to Sinai. Otherwise, you're never going to get there. And by counting, what we are doing is understanding I need to grow, I need to develop, I need to come to where I can approach Sinai. So it's a particular way that the Torah designates how to make Shavuos halachically, but it's obviously that the case that the Kadosh Baruch Hu is saying that in order to make Torah mine, I have to make myself the kli, I have to make myself a vessel to be there at Sinai. I have to, I can't just receive the invitation, so to speak, in the mail. It doesn't work that way. I have to make it so that I can approach. The invitation was taking me from Mitzrayim, because Baruch Hu said, come. Come, that's what it says, right? That's the 4th lashon of Geula. I'm taking you to be my people. Okay, so it takes two, right? Lakicha is the lashon of how a person marries a woman, right? That's called lakicha. We learned that you could use and should use a tabas worth money or with actual money. We learned that from how Avram bought Sdei Ephron for Ma'aras HaMachpelah. That's lashon lakicha. When the Torah describes marriage, ki yikach ish isha, right? That's what the Torah says. Ki yikach ish isha. It's a lashon kicha, because he's acquiring his helpmate. He's acquiring. Now, when you acquire, what does it take? It takes the other side to say, okay, right? At least she has to put out her finger, at the very least. Yeah. And accept it. Yeah. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, "V'lekachta meschem lilam," I'm taking you. So do you think the kicha by HaKadosh Baruch Hu is without us having to do anything? Everybody knows we come to Sinai like Chassan and Kala. HaKadosh Baruch Hu taking Am Yisrael as his bride. Okay? And what does the bride do? Does not the bride have to walk down to the chuppah? Counting our steps from Pesach to Shavuos is the bride of the Rebbeinu Shalom walking to the chuppah and choosing to become the bride of the Almighty. I don't mean that figuratively. I mean it as literally as we can possibly conceive of it. Am Yisrael is saying, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, "V'lakachti eschem li la'am," I'm taking you as a people. I'm going to prepare for the chasana. Hagbel es ahar v'kidashto, around the mountain we walk. The kala surrounding the chassan 7 times is in a fulfillment of Hagbel es ahar v'kidashto, of what a HaKadosh Baruch Hu expected of us, which is to surround him, so to speak, and be with him at the foot of Har Sinai as he comes to us. That means we have to do the work. We have to make all the preparations. We have to make all the efforts to be able to be the Kala. I'll tell you a fascinating thing. The Zohar HaKadosh, Shtelzich means that the Zohar HaKadosh is very specific about the word Usfartem lochem yimachar Shabbos, because it doesn't say that kind of a word where you count, and there aren't that many mitzvahs where you have to count. Where you have mitzvahs that says Usfartem, so then they teach one another. The Reb Chaim, famous Reb Chaim Briska says that just like we have to count 50 years of Yovel, and it's the counting of Bezdin, of the Sanhedrin, that creates the Yovel on that 50th year. Same thing, Usfartem in the case of Shavuos. The counting of the omer creates Shavuos, the Yom Tov 50 days later. Because it says, in both cases, the word Sphera. Where else does it say Sphera? Very importantly, a woman becoming tahor. That's right. Azava Gedoyla, the Safra La Shivas Yamin. And she counts 7 days. After all of the sources of not Tahara are gone, she's no longer presenting the sources and the causes for absence of Tahara. And we count them halachically, Shiva Nikiyim, they're called, right? So she counts them. The Safra, and it says the Safra Lo. Not the Safra she should count. It says the Safra Lo. What does Lo mean? For her sake. Safra Lo. Because for her sake, she's coming to a Tahara. For her sake, she's coming where she's able to be again with her husband. The Safra Lo. She's counting to the great holiness, to the Tahara. Says the Zohar HaKadosh. The Zohar HaKadosh. Sfartem Lochem is the mirror image of the Safra Lo. Sfartem Lochem Mimacharas HaShabbos is, and it's also 7 times 7. And the Zohar says there are 7 times 7, there are 49 rivers that are sources of Tahara in Shemai. The sources of Tahara. By the way, in order to immerse in those rivers, you have to be preparing during Sphera. We'll talk about it a little bit. Right? You have to be preparing with all of the arrays of sources of Tahara in our lives during these 7 weeks. That's what Usfartem Lachamim says the Zohar HaKadosh. we have to immerse, as it were, in these sources of purity. And the immersion in the sources of purity are the work of these Yemei Sphera. And it's interesting. There are very few mitzvahs where so much Kabbalah has made its way into the tradition and into the Siddur. And in the case of Sphera Saima, there it is. And we say on a Bakayach, which has tremendously mystical, important reasons to be said. And then we say the tefillah, at Tahar V'Skadesh, I should become Tar and holy, and perfect a particular character, a particular energy, each week having a particular power that we hope we will restore to ourselves and regain and renew week by week by week. First week, Chesed, Gvura, right? Tiferes. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. I just want to also mention a fascinating and very beautiful Srar Hamar. It's interesting. We're talking already once today about the Yitzchak Arama, who was victim of the Spanish expulsion. One of the very famous, great Chachamim to suffer terribly because of it was Rav Avram Saba. He wrote a few svarim, but one of them on Chumash, which we Baruch Hashem have. He wrote much that was destroyed, was lost, called Sefer Tzror Hamor. He was from Castile in Spain, also a victim of the expulsion. And he says that we should look at coming to Har Sinai, literally like the Zohar says, that it's the ultimate in reaching Tahara, in immersion in Torah. Because Torah is compared many times to what? Water. Very good. Torah is compared to water. It's absolutely the case that immersion in Torah is how we become Torah. Ma mikvah mitaris etmeim. Kadosh Baruch Hu is mitaris Yisrael. How? How you mitaris Yisrael? Through what? Through Torah. If that's what we live for, live by, if that's entirely in what we are immersed, so then we are Torah. Coming to Har Sinai at the end of the counting is like the trivila of a noble, holy Jewish woman after her count. Yeah. Arachaim says, "Usfartem." You hear the samach and the pei and the reish. The luchos were made of a stone, sanpirion, some bright diamond kind of stone. And svartem lachem means make yourselves shine, like the luchos themselves. It's Arachaim HaKadosh, not a Chassidish Torah. And by the way, Chassidish Torah is also very holy. But I'm just saying, if someone is a little skeptical sometimes about Chassidish Torah, so you should know that Arachaim is from Morocco, not from not from Galicia. Yeah, Arachaim HaKadosh, who was, of course, here in Yerushalayim briefly before his Petir, one of the most sought after and the places that people go to on Har HaZeisim. I once heard that Mitzrayim, a Meitzar, is a restriction. A tight place is a Meitzar. Tzadi Reish, Tsar means something tight and restricted and inhibiting. Yam, Yud, Mem, together, 10 and 40 is 50. Mitzrayim, Meitzar, Yam means that Mitzrayim had a constriction around us spiritually that did not allow us to expand, did not allow us to grow. The 50 days after Mitzar Yam, after the constriction didn't allow for the expansive Jewish soul to reach out to and expand universally into Hashem's world, to greet him, to be with him, for him to be with us, but rather there was constriction and restriction in which there was smallness, such smallness as to inhibit our reaching past the earthiness of our guf. All of this constriction is set aside, and we're able to leap and bound up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, step by step by step by step. All 50 constrictions being overtaken, being obviated, being weakened, being defeated as we count up to and reach finally Zman Matan Teresenu. So that's why we should think about these days and think in terms really of these important midos, these important energies. This week is the week of Netzach. Netzach. Netzach means victory. Netzach means eternity, nitzchius. Right? It's one of the reasons why so much of Tehillim, as we study it, begins with La Min Natseach. And the idea is that the things that we are able to gain and midos we're able to expand and energy that we're able to manifest as great souls, as great human beings, is not something that's temporary. It's something that we're able to solidify and cause it to be netzach. And netzach also means, victory means that there's an opposite side, which means we're able to have good effect on others. Whose midah is netzach? Anybody know? Who? Moshe. Correct. Because Moshe's role was to lead and bring the Torah to others, to all of us in Klal Yisrael. So this power, and it's also, by the way, it's the central power, right? Because you have three, Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferes on one side of Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus on the other. In the middle, in the center, therefore, of the process is Netzach. Because there has to be the power, everlasting, in all the energies, and the, meaning, we call it in English, I'm not sure if it's so in Great Britain, most of us are expats of America, right? Yeah, staying power. Do you have the expression staying power? I'm not sure if that's an expression, if that's a bitui on the other side of the pond, but you know, it is used, staying power. Yeah, the sovereign, the king of your erstwhile empire, yesterday expressed very, very correctly that we share so much except for language. Because where I come from, it's slang, you know. And I admit that. There's nothing so beautiful as proper and well-expressed enunciation of the English language by a Brit as opposed to a Yankee. Yeah, but we digress. The netzchias, right? The netzchias of Moshe Rabbeinu is not only that the Torah is forever, yeah, and that Moshe Rabbeinu Yada Ishus Kvorosai, that he somehow transcended Kvura. You know, burial means being forgotten. Shiva Rafutna once taught us how important it is that the Torah says that he didn't have Kvura in the classic sense, because Kvura is once somebody is buried, they cease to be something we hope for in the here and now. We love and we have a desire, but we don't expect to have that person with us anymore because of the Kvura. The Kvura is a certain finality to it, which Moshe Rabbeinu did not have. Le'oda Ishas Kvurosa. That makes Moshe Rabbeinu and what he stands for, Netzach. And that power, that staying power, that stability is the fulcrum. It's in the middle of the sphere. That's this week. We think about all of the midos and energies that we've gained and that we're going to gain, and we bring them together and say, we must keep them, hold them. We have to impart to them a certain stability, a permanence, that we're not going to have them dissipate. They're going to remain with us. Yeah? That's part of the work of Netzach. So I'm just going to conclude by saying that we should count Sphera mindfully. That we should have some of these kavanos of this beautiful, holy process of coming. From the time where we took that humble sheaf of barley and said, for your avoda, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for your sake, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're here. For your sake, we have some parnasa. And add to it, then step by step, the greatness of a Jewish man and woman, the greatness of Am Yisrael, as we approach and as we build ourselves up to receiving Torah and Yetz Hashem after the Yom Chamishim arrives. When the Yom Chamishim arrives, then we'll be able to be really renewed. V'grafta mincha hadasha laHashem.
We're talking about that there is no fixed date, or thought about sure state. Not only that there is a fixed date, but also you always get it even in the desert because it can be received any place. So that kind of similar over the distance. There's no place, no distinction. And actually, that has probably the same thing in a way.